Imagine it's a completely normal day on Earth. People are driving to work, scrolling on their phones, talking, living their routines. The sky is bright, stable, familiar. Everything feels predictable, safe. And then something impossible happens. The sun disappears. Not hidden, not blocked, not fading, just gone. But here's the strange part. Nothing changes immediately. For a few minutes, the world keeps going exactly as before. The sky is still blue, sunlight still fills the streets, shadows still exist where they should. You wouldn't even realize anything is wrong. And there's a reason for that. Light from the sun takes about 8 minutes to reach Earth. So even if the sun vanished instantly, we would still be living in its afterimage. But then, those 8 minutes pass, and everything changes at once. The sky goes black, not slowly, not like a sunset, instantly. Like someone turned off the entire universe. Day becomes night across the entire planet at the same moment. No warning, no transition, just silence in the sky. Stars appear everywhere, even in places where moments ago sunlight was shining. Now imagine standing outside when this happens. 1 second, you are in daylight. The next, you are looking straight into deep space. People freeze. Cars slow down, cities begin to react in confusion. What just happened? But here's the problem. Losing light is only the beginning. Because the sun is not just a source of brightness, it is the reason Earth stays alive in the way we know it. It controls temperature, it drives weather, it keeps ecosystems stable, it holds everything in balance in ways we rarely even think about. And now, that invisible structure is gone. You just can't feel its full impact yet, but you will. Because in the next few moments, something even more fundamental begins to fail. And this is where everything starts to take a much darker turn. If you enjoyed this kind of mind-bending journey into science and the unknown, make sure to subscribe. Because every week we break down extreme what-if scenarios and uncover how our universe really works in ways most people never think about. Right after the sun vanishes, the most confusing thing is this. Nothing seems wrong. The sky is still bright, shadows are still sharp, the ground still feels solid under your feet. If you didn't know what happened, you would never suspect anything has changed. But the reason for this delay is not magic. It is physics. Light does not travel instantly. It moves at about 300,000 kilometers per second. That sounds incredibly fast, but space is enormous. Even at that speed, sunlight takes around 8 minutes to reach Earth. So when the sun disappears, Earth is still receiving light that already left the sun earlier. For those 8 minutes, we are literally living in the past, seeing a sun that no longer exists. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Light is not the only thing that travels at a finite speed. Gravity does too. That means the sun's gravitational pull, the force keeping Earth in orbit, also takes about 8 minutes to reach us. So for those same 8 minutes, nothing changes. Earth keeps orbiting exactly as before, as if the sun is still there. But then, the delay ends, and everything updates at once. The light stops arriving, and the sun's gravity stops reaching us. At that exact moment, Earth is no longer bound to anything. So what happens next? Does Earth slow down? Does it fall somewhere else? No. It continues moving in the same direction it was already traveling, but instead of orbiting the sun, it now moves in a straight line through space, like a stone released from a sling. And here's the strange part. You would not feel anything. No shaking, no impact, no sudden warning. Everything feels completely normal on the surface. But on a cosmic scale, everything has changed. Earth is now drifting through darkness, no longer held in place by the sun's gravity. And this silent shift is about to reveal something even more unsettling about our world. 8 minutes are over, and now everything changes. The sunlight you were seeing was not real anymore. It was just delayed light, still arriving from a sun that no longer exists. And now, it stops. In a single moment, the entire planet goes dark. Not like a sunset, not like clouds covering the sky. It is instant. As if someone switched off the universe, the sky turns completely black, and for the first time, you can see stars everywhere, even over cities that were bright just seconds ago. Here is something surprising. Those stars suddenly look sharper and brighter than ever before, because there is no sunlight to overpower them anymore. But something else disappears too. The moon. The moon does not produce light. It only reflects sunlight. So without the sun, it is still there, but completely invisible. Now, imagine standing in that moment. Daylight is gone, the world is dark, and billions of people are looking up, confused and afraid. At first, human systems react quickly. Artificial lights turn on everywhere. Cities light up, cars, phones, buildings, street lights, all trying to replace the missing sun. But here is the problem. This system is not designed for a world without sunlight. Solar energy production stops instantly. Entire regions that depend on solar power lose their supply immediately. Power grids start experiencing sudden overloads as demand shifts everywhere at once. And then something even more unstable begins. Panic. Because no one was prepared for a global blackout at noon. No explanation, no warning, just total darkness covering the planet. Air travel becomes risky. Pilots rely on instruments, but coordination becomes harder. Emergency systems activate across countries as confusion spreads. But the most dangerous change is not what you can see. It is what you can feel. Temperature. Without the sun, Earth is no longer receiving energy. No more incoming heat. No more balance. At first, it feels small. A slight drop in warmth, almost unnoticeable. But this is only the beginning of a much larger shift, because Earth is now surviving only on the heat it already stored, and that supply is slowly running out. And once that stored heat starts fading, the real survival challenge begins. The lights are gone, but the real danger is not the darkness, it is what comes after it, the cold. So the real question is simple. How fast does Earth actually freeze without the sun? Minutes, hours, or something slower but far more dangerous? Right after the sun disappears, Earth is no longer receiving any new energy. No new heat is coming in. But at first, this does not feel dramatic. Because Earth already stores heat, the ground holds warmth, the oceans hold even more. Even the air carries leftover energy from billions of years of sunlight. So in the beginning, the change is subtle. Maybe a slight drop in temperature, a cooler breeze, something you might barely notice. But here's the problem. Earth is now like a giant heater that has been switched off, but is still slowly losing warmth into space. And in space, heat does not stay trapped. It escapes very efficiently. Within a few hours, temperatures begin to fall more noticeably. The entire planet slips into permanent night conditions, with no sunrise to interrupt the cooling. Now imagine this. It is already dark everywhere, and instead of warming up again, it just keeps getting colder. No recovery cycle, no daylight reset, only continuous cooling. Within 24 hours, the global average temperature could drop to around 0 degrees Celsius or even below. That is the freezing point of water. But here's the surprising part. Earth does not turn into a frozen planet instantly. Why? Because the oceans act like massive thermal batteries. Water holds heat far better than land or air. So even when the surface cools, deeper layers stay warm for longer. This creates a temporary delay in the freezing process. But it only slows the outcome. It does not stop it. Plants shut down almost immediately. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stops completely. That means no new energy for ecosystems that depend on it. And as time passes, more systems begin to fail one by one. Now, imagine this continuing for days or weeks. The surface would eventually freeze solid. Ice would start forming across oceans. Only deep underwater regions would remain liquid for much longer. But remember, all of this is happening within just a single day. And even in that short time, Earth is already changing in ways that are hard to reverse. Because the longer the sun stays gone, the harder it becomes for the planet to recover. And while the cold spreads silently across the surface, something else begins to collapse even faster than temperature itself. The cold is rising, but that is not what breaks first. Before Earth fully freezes, human systems begin to collapse in ways most people would never expect. So the real question is this: what fails first? Technology, infrastructure, or society itself? As the darkness continues, the first signs of chaos are small, almost invisible at first. A few power outages, minor system delays, machines struggling to adjust to conditions they were never designed for. But then, everything escalates. Air travel is one of the first major systems to break down. Pilots depend on visibility, predictable lighting, and stable conditions. Now, imagine flying in a world where day has permanently turned into night. Airports react instantly. Flights are grounded. Some planes already in the air struggle to navigate safely through unfamiliar darkness. But here is the problem. It is not just aviation. Power grids around the world begin to fail under pressure. With no sunlight, solar energy production drops to zero immediately. At the same time, energy demand spikes. People switch on lights, heaters, emergency systems, everything at once. This imbalance pushes systems beyond their limits. Entire regions begin losing electricity. Now, imagine cities filled with millions of people, suddenly sitting in complete darkness without power. Communication systems are next to fail. Mobile networks, internet infrastructure, emergency communication lines, all of them depend on stable electricity and coordination. As outages spread, communication becomes unreliable. And when information breaks down, confusion spreads even faster. This is where the situation shifts from technical failure to human panic. People begin to panic. What would you do if the sun disappeared and no one could explain why? Governments try to respond. Emergency systems activate, but the problem is simple. There is no complete information available. Everyone is reacting in real time to something unprecedented. Confusion spreads faster than facts. Some regions enforce emergency control. Others begin to slip into disorder. But here's the twist. All of this is only the beginning layer. The real danger is not the immediate chaos. It is what happens next. Food production stops almost instantly. Without sunlight, crops cannot grow. Entire agricultural systems shut down. Supply chains begin to break apart, and ecosystems, the foundation of life on Earth, start collapsing faster than anyone predicted. Because without the sun, every living system on the planet begins to fail, one layer at a time. Now, while human systems are struggling to stay alive, something even more fundamental is starting to change around the world. The lights are gone, the temperature is dropping. But the real question is, what happens to the air you are breathing right now? Does it disappear? Does it freeze? Or does it slowly become something entirely different? Because the atmosphere is not as stable as it feels. At first, nothing seems wrong. You can still breathe normally. Oxygen is still in the air, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, everything is still there. And here is something surprising. Even without the sun, Earth does not instantly lose its atmosphere. Gravity is still holding it in place. Nothing just floats away. So in the early hours, breathing is not the problem. But here is the problem. The atmosphere depends on sunlight far more than most people realize. Sunlight is the engine behind Earth's weather system. It heats different regions unevenly. That temperature difference creates wind, clouds, storms, and circulation patterns. Without that energy, the entire system starts to break down. Winds begin to slow down, then they shift unpredictably. And eventually, large-scale weather systems start collapsing completely, not because Earth is becoming stable, but because the driving force behind the system is gone. Now, imagine a planet with no sunlight, no weather cycles, and no stable climate behavior. It sounds peaceful at first, but it is actually unstable in a different way, because the cooling is not uniform. Some regions lose heat faster than others. This creates uneven pressure systems in the atmosphere, leading to strange and unpredictable air behavior. Clouds also begin to disappear over time. Without heat, evaporation slows down. The water cycle weakens. Less moisture rises into the sky, and slowly, cloud formation declines. Then comes a longer-term effect. If the sun remains gone, temperatures could eventually drop low enough that parts of the atmosphere begin to change state. Gases like carbon dioxide can freeze under extreme cold conditions, not immediately, but over time, it becomes possible. This means the very air around you could slowly start transforming. Earth becomes colder, quieter, and increasingly lifeless. But even this is not the biggest change happening, because while Earth's atmosphere is struggling to survive, something far larger is beginning to unfold beyond our planet. The sun is gone from Earth, but the real shift is happening far beyond our planet, because the sun was never just a light source, it was the anchor holding the entire solar system together. So what happens when that anchor suddenly disappears? Back on Earth, everything is already collapsing step by step, but now imagine zooming out into space itself. Every planet, every orbit, every stable path, all of it depends on one thing: the sun's gravity. It constantly pulls planets inward while their motion keeps them moving forward, creating perfect balance. But here's the key detail: nothing changes instantly. For about 8 minutes, the solar system still behaves normally. Planets keep orbiting as if nothing has happened. Then, reality updates. The sun's gravity is gone, and at that exact moment, every planet is released from its orbit at the same time. So what happens next? Do they collide in chaos? Surprisingly, no. Space is so large that even massive planets are incredibly far apart. So instead of crashing, they simply continue moving in the direction they were already traveling. Straight lines, no curves, no orbits. It's like cutting a spinning rope holding multiple balls. Each ball doesn't stop. It flies outward in its own direction. Now, imagine that happening across the entire solar system at once. Earth is no longer orbiting. Mars is no longer orbiting. Jupiter, Saturn, every planet, all drifting independently through space. The solar system doesn't explode. It slowly unravels. But here's the deeper problem. This isn't stable either. Without the sun's gravity shaping their paths, planets could still slowly influence each other over enormous timescales. Orbits that took billions of years to form are gone in seconds. And from Earth's perspective, there is only one truth left. We are no longer part of a system. We are drifting alone through expanding darkness. And just when it feels like everything is already ended, one final possibility still remains to be explored. After 24 hours of complete darkness, something impossible happens. The sun returns. At first, it feels like relief, like everything is finally going back to normal. But what if this return doesn't fix anything, and instead makes things more unstable? For 24 hours, Earth has been drifting in darkness, cooling, breaking systems, shifting away from the conditions it once depended on. Then, suddenly, far in space, the sun is back. Not instantly affecting Earth, though. Just like before, there's an 8-minute delay. No light, no change, only anticipation. Then it arrives. Sunlight begins reaching Earth again. Slowly, the planet is illuminated. Shadows return. The sky brightens. At first glance, it looks like recovery. Temperatures stabilize slightly. Ice begins reacting to heat. Some atmospheric balance starts to return. Even ecosystems show small signs of movement. In limited areas, plants may begin restarting photosynthesis. But here's the problem. Earth is not the same planet that lost the sun. During those 24 hours, everything changed. Temperatures dropped sharply. Ice formed across regions, weather systems collapsed, human infrastructure weakened, and the planet itself drifted further away from its original conditions. So when the sun returns, it doesn't reset anything. It interacts with a system that is already damaged and unstable. Earth is slightly out of position. Even a small shift in orbit or alignment can change how sunlight distributes across the planet. That means seasons, climates, and weather patterns may no longer behave the way they used to. And here's the deeper issue. Systems like this don't just snap back into place, they adjust slowly, sometimes unpredictably. So instead of instant recovery, Earth enters a long period of correction, a phase where everything tries to find balance again, but may never return exactly to what it was before. Because when a system this large is disrupted, it doesn't simply reset. It evolves into something new. And that raises one final question. If everything has changed this much in just 24 hours, what does survival even mean after the sun returns? So after everything that has happened, what is the final outcome for Earth? Does it collapse instantly in darkness or somehow continue to survive? The truth is more unexpected, because the real danger was never instant extinction. It was dependence. After 24 hours without the sun, Earth is still here. That alone may sound surprising after everything that has unfolded. The planet does not break apart immediately. It does not disintegrate or stop functioning all at once. Life, in fact, is more resilient than we imagine. Oceans still hold heat. The atmosphere still exists. Some natural systems continue working, even under extreme stress. So yes, Earth survives. But here's the problem. Survival is not stability. Plants are struggling without sunlight. Photosynthesis has stopped. Food chains are weakening from the base upward. Temperatures continue dropping, pushing ecosystems closer to collapse. And humans are still here, but under severe pressure. Every system that supports modern life is being tested at once. Now, zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The sun is not just a distant star. It is the foundation of Earth's entire structure of life. It defines the habitable zone. It controls climate patterns, weather systems, ocean currents, and long-term environmental stability. And here's something most people never think about. Even gravity and orbital balance are part of this system. If the sun is removed, the organized structure holding planets in place begins to dissolve. Motion continues, but order does not. But the most important realization is not physical. It is psychological. We rarely notice how many things depend on the sun at the same time. Light, heat, food, time, biological rhythms, entire civilizations built on a constant we never questioned. And when that constant is removed, even briefly, it reveals something uncomfortable. Everything is balanced more precisely than we realize, not because it is strong, but because it has always worked without interruption. And that is the final reality. Earth does not instantly end without the sun, but it does reveal how fragile its existence truly is. And once you understand that fragility, one final question remains. Now, if you enjoyed this journey into a world without the sun, make sure to subscribe, because we explore deep scientific what-if scenarios like this every week, breaking complex ideas into simple visual stories. If you found this video interesting, leave a like so more people can discover it. And tell me in the comments, what other cosmic disaster should we explore next?